Hello, dear students. I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to a new lecture. This is the 23rd lecture. In this lecture, we're going to focus on writing. We're starting with a new type of writing, which is the narrative writing. So first of all, what is a narrative essay? A narrative essay is a type of essay that has a single motive, which means an aim or a central point around which the whole narrative revolves. All the incidents, the events, the happenings, and also the characters revolve around a single motive presented in the narrative. So a narrative isn't only any story for entertainment with events being narrated. Just tell me what happened. No, there is a main point that I want to deliver, and I want the reader of my essay to get that point, like the moral or the theme of writing this narrative. That's why we're going to relate writing a narrative essay to our theme, adolescence. So a narrative essay is similar to a simple 5-paragraph essay. It's no different from the format of any essay. We have an introduction, the body, and the conclusion. However, in an expository text or an expository essay, we have like an idea which we want to explain. So in the introduction, I introduce that idea. I elaborate and explain that main idea in the body, and then I conclude and restate my main idea in the conclusion. Now, the narrative, it's similar. However, it has its own characteristics, in which here I'm not explaining an idea, I'm showing a point through the narration of the events. So I need to show the reader in the introduction, what is this motive? What's this central point that I'm focusing on in this narration? And I narrate the events and all the happenings, of course, in addition to the characters, and we will look at more details what a narrative essay includes. So I add all these events in the body, and then in the conclusion, I conclude or close this narrative. This narrative essay, the reader, when the reader reads my essay, needs to understand how this, for example, conflict got resolved. If I'm presenting a conflict, if I'm telling a narrative of events showing my central point, the reader, needs to understand my point when my narrative finishes, which means I shouldn't leave the reader with questions about like what will happen next or what's the point. These questions should be answered. So that's what we write mainly in the conclusion. I close my narrative, I tell the reader how the story ended, and I show the reader that's the moral or that's the theme of the story. That's the central point that I'm trying to deliver by telling you these events. All right, so it has similar simple 5-paragraph essay. However, it has a specific or a different structure. Okay, so same format, but different structure. So as we said, it's a narrative. There's a narration of events instead of explanation of a point. We have characters, we have incidents happening, and also we have dialogues. So what these characters are telling each other. What's the function of the narrative essay? It describes people, presents their conversations, what they're saying. It also narrates their experiences to teach lessons to the readers. So as I said, the aim of writing a narrative essay isn't only to tell the events, however, to deliver a main point. So I need to choose why I'm writing this essay, to tell myself this is the motive and build the events and show or present these characters based on that motive, okay? In fact, it's like a story, but different in that it's weaved around this motive. So that's what I was just saying. A motive is given before the incidents of the essay. Again, as I said in the previous, on the previous slide, I need to show the reader my motive in the introduction of my narrative. The readers become aware more of this single theme or central idea or motive once they go through the essay. And we'll look at the sample and you will get it in a more clear way. Its major aim is to provide information about life experiences. So I would be telling the reader, that's what I've experienced, and that's the lesson that I learned. And this lesson that I learned, that I'm showing to the reader through the narration of these events, what I went through and how I felt, this is the motive. This is part of the aim that I'm writing this narrative essay for, and that's what I want the reader to get by the end of my narrative. Now, a main point that I want to include in this lecture is the difference between a narrative essay and a story, because I'm sure most of you would be confusing and just going and writing an essay of only narration of events. And I'm telling you from now, that's not what I'm teaching you to write here. Don't tell me an entertaining story with just events happening with no point there. If you do that, your essay wouldn't be correctly a narrative essay, which means you're going to lose grades. So that's a main point you need to get before writing a narrative essay. So a narrative essay has a specific format, specific aspects to discover, and a specific motive, as we said. It revolves around that motive set by the writer prior to writing the essay. So for example, I'm writing this narrative to show, for example, that adolescents go through hardships or hard times during that period of time, and they need someone to understand them. So I tell a narrative of my personal experience, for example, what I experienced in terms of peer pressure or the conflict with my parents. I'm narrating the events, but not just to tell the events, however, to deliver the point that, yeah, teenagers during that period of time need someone to understand them. It's hard to compensate between all the changes they're going through, and parents need to understand them. So I set that motive before I write my essay, and then I build all the events, the characters, the narration based on that motive. So while writing these events, I should have in my mind the idea that through what I'm writing, the reader will be getting that main idea that I'm trying to deliver. All right, so it revolves around the motive that I set prior to writing, so before writing my essay. A short story, however, which I don't want you to do, is different from a narrative essay. How is that? It does not revolve around a preset motive. There is no aim from writing a short story. It's just a story of events, maybe only for entertainment, and that it does not have a specific format also. So be aware not to fall into that trap and write a short story. Also, a short story always leaves the readers at a critical juncture with the desire to discover more. So when the short story ends, you wouldn't get all your questions answered. You would want to know what will happen next, for example, or you will have more questions to be answered. However, in our narrative essay, when I close my narrative essay in the conclusion, when it ends, the reader will be fully satisfied. They would know what happened and get my idea. Why are you telling me these events? They would get these events. Then they do not wish to read anymore or do not want to discover anymore. Now, what are the elements of a narrative essay? A narrative essay has 3 required elements. So every narrative essay should include these elements, which are the characters, the theme or the motive, what's the main idea or what's the moral lesson that I want the reader to get by the end of this narrative essay, and the dialogue, okay? The dialogue or what's being said. So the characters first. The characters are an important part of a narrative essay. Why? Because even if the essay is autobiographical, in nature, the person writing the essay is a character involving some other characters who act, behave, and do like all other characters presented in stories and novels. So whether it's a biography or an autobiography, so whether it's a personal narrative, someone telling his or her own story, or you're writing about the story of another person, still the characters play an important role because all this narrative essay is going around those characters. So those characters will show me what's going on, what they're experiencing, how they're feeling, And through those experiences of the characters, through what these characters say, okay, I will be getting that motive or that moral lesson. Second, the theme or the motive. It's a narrative essay revolves around a theme or a motive. Every narrative essay revolves around a theme or a motive. This theme or motive is presented in its thesis statement, as I said in the introduction. It breaks it down into three distinct pieces of evidence. These three distinct pieces of evidence are then further elaborated through characters and body paragraphs. So in the introduction, I need to show my reader that this is the theme, this is the focus, this is the lesson or the main idea I'm trying to deliver to you while narrating to you this story. This is what I introduce in the introduction. And then I show and elaborate further through the characters, through the events and the dialogue in the body paragraphs. Now, what's a dialogue? A dialogue is used to capture the conversation between characters. So what the characters are saying. In a narrative essay, dialogue is the third important element without which the characters lose their worth and liveliness. So in a narrative essay, you need to bring the characters to life. You need to make that reader like feel the story as if it's happening in front of him or her, like to feel what these characters are feeling, to understand what they're experiencing. That's why to bring these characters to life, we add dialogue, what this character is saying. So that's an important element of a narrative essay. Now, I'm going to write a narrative essay, so I need to choose a topic. There are four major steps to choose the topic of a narrative essay. The first step, I choose the theme or thematic strand around which to weave the story, which is again the motive. It's the most important thing. Why am I writing this story? Okay, so before thinking of the events, I need to choose what's the aim of writing this story. Then the events come to revolve around this theme. Second, I outline the character, the events, and the happenings, as I said, based on the theme. So I'm trying to show the reader, for example, that adolescents usually get misjudged by adults. That's the theme I presented in the introduction, and through characters and the events, I show the reader in my body how adolescents get misjudged. How do I show that? Through the experiences, through the events, through the way I'm presenting my characters and what's happening in the story. Then I think about the conversation of the characters and I place them in a setting and plot. So what are these characters saying in this story, which also will help show and confirm this theme. And fourth major step while choosing the topic is to synchronize the characters with the plot and the setting to see if they integrate with each other. So I do not choose just any characters, any conversation, any dialogue. I choose them wisely. Why? To be synchronized, to be fit with my theme, with all the setting. So do they get with each other, you know? Do these characters support my purpose for writing this narrative? Do these events go hand in hand with the purpose and the events and the characters, okay? Now, what are the transitional expressions, like the transitional signals that I use in a narrative writing? The transitional expressions used in a narrative paragraph are after, finally, soon as, or as soon as, later, then, before, meanwhile, upon, during, next, when, first, now, and while. Now, as you can see, clearly, these transitional expressions are mostly focused on showing the time and the chronological order. And that's something important in a narrative essay, to show how are these events related and how one thing is caused by the other, the order of the events. So finally, during, next, I'm narrating a story. I'm showing what's happening what before what, and the relation between those events. That's why usually these are time expressions. A good way to plan for a well-developed paragraph or essay is to write out a topic sentence. Then you write the events in the chronological order, as we said. Then you write the conclusion. This is a good way to make sure you stay on topic and that all the events are in the correct order. So we use transitional expressions to show the relation between events and to show the order, the chronological order, what happened first, what happened next. Now, how do I outline a narrative essay? And always we write an outline before writing our essay. I choose a title. For sure, the title should reflect the main idea of this essay and mainly the motive. And also we know that a title should be capitalized. Then the characters. But before that, I must have chosen the motive. Why am I writing this essay? Based on the motive, I choose my characters. For example, if it's adolescence, if the topic mainly is peer pressure, I have myself. If it's biography, myself, whether it's biography or autobiography, doesn't matter. But in the characters, for example, I choose the main character and all the other characters that are taking part in the events, like that adolescent or that teenager, the parents, the peers, the teachers, whatever, the neighbors, all the characters that are important in my story and that will help through the events to show my motive. Then the setting, where and when is this story taking place? What are the main events? And the events, again, should be revolving around the motive and supporting the main idea that I want the reader to get at the end of my narrative essay. And the ending, in which I need to show how this story ended, what happened at the end, and through this ending, again, I show the moral lesson, which I will write at the end, the lesson learned or the final outcome, which was the first purpose for writing this narrative and which is the last thing the reader will get after reading your essay. Now, as always, after I prepare pre-writing the essay and I write the essay, I need to use a checklist. So what's the process of writing a narrative paragraph? We refer to this checklist of steps whenever you intend to write a narrative paragraph or essay of your own to check whether I'm writing a correct narrative writing. First of all, am I narrowing my topic in the light of audience and purpose? So is the topic I'm writing about supporting the audience? The audience are the readers, okay? Those people who are going to read my essay and understand my topic, because not all audience can understand my topic. Which words am I using? To which age level am I writing this? Is it a teenager who's going to read my essay, for example? So narrow my topic in light of the audience and my purpose. Write a topic sentence which presents your topic and tells the point of your story. Now, this is for writing a paragraph, but our focus isn't on writing a paragraph, it's on writing an essay. So we write an introduction. In our introduction, specifically the thesis statement, I show my topic, my motive, and the point of writing this story. Then I brainstorm all the events and details that took place in this story, select the important events and drop irrelevant ones. So if I see that I've added more events that are unnecessary for the main idea I'm talking so much, then I can drop them out. Fifth, I arrange the events in the chronological order. What happened first and what happened next. Sixth, I build up my essay by adding the details, the important details, because in the outline, we write the general ideas. In my essay, I write the details and I elaborate. Then I use the correct transitional signals to indicate time sequence and the chronological order of the events. Then I check my paragraph for support, logic and coherence, okay? Then at the end, I proofread for errors, for sure in the grammar, punctuation, sentence structure, spelling, and mechanics. And I write my final draft and publish my work. Now let's look at a narrative or at a sample narrative essay about the theme adolescence. So the title, Personal Adolescence. So this, before we start, this essay is written using first-person point of view. As you can see from the first sentence, the pronoun I, so a teenage is writing his or her own story. So let's look at the introduction first. When I was in my adolescence, I did an immense amount of changing and growing. During this period in my life, many things changed, such as my appearance, body, feelings, friends, and my self-confidence. So, in comparison to expository, we are introducing the topic, but in a way of narration, okay? Telling what happened. And be careful, in a narrative essay, I use the past simple tense, which we already studied, okay? Let's continue. I was forming myself through the experiences I had because as we talked in class, during this period, the person is changing from childhood to adulthood. So you're forming your own personality based on the environment around you and your own experiences. So I was forming myself through the experiences I had. I made many choices in my adolescence that shaped me into who I am today. When I was in elementary school, I did not care what anyone thought of me. I was a complete tomboy in the way I dressed and acted. I wore mostly long basketball shorts and t-shirts and never wanted my hair to be fixed by my mom. During recess, I always played football with the boys and loved to play all different kinds of sports. When I transitioned to middle school, I started to care more about what others say. So what's the motive, as you can see in this introduction, of writing this narrative? Mainly, an adolescent telling her experience during this period of time, this turbulent period of time, remember, and telling us what she experienced, and especially while forming her personality, the choices, and especially the choices that affect how the society view her. For example, here, choosing to play with boys when she's a girl, okay? And how she changed this when she moved to middle school and she started changing and, as we said, having female friends. You will see more details. So that's the motive. Now the body, first body paragraph. Again, narration of events that support the motive. I usually didn't care about what others would say to me because I just loved playing sports with the boys. But going into middle school, I began to have an interest in learning how to do my makeup and fix my hair. This transition into becoming less of a tomboy was not easy because I did not want anyone to make a big deal of me wearing nicer clothes or putting on makeup. In middle school, I remember hanging out with some of my girls' friends and in the middle school, I remember hanging out with some of my girl friends and they helped me do my makeup and pick out a cute outfit. So clearly the events being narrated here using the past simple tense are supporting the motive that was presented in the introduction, which is the experience of a teenage, especially the own choices and how the environment accept this. This was the very first step. I put on makeup and I had, this was the very first time I put on makeup and I had fun doing it with my friends. From 6th to 9th grade, my appearance and the way I held myself changed. One day in class, my PE coach noticed that I was athletic and asked me to come to volleyball tryouts. I had never played volleyball in my entire life, but I enjoyed almost every sport I had ever played. So I decided to give it a shot. I ended up making the team and playing throughout middle school and for enjoyment through high school. This is something that helped me in many different ways. In elementary school, I had mostly friends that were boys, but since joining the volleyball team, I then had a whole squad of girls that became my friends. Then later in the year, I played on the basketball team and made even more friends that were girls. Now I had way more friends that were girls than guys. In middle school, having girlfriends was important because we were all able to relate to one another in the changes we were going through, okay? So clearly here, hold on. So clearly here in the conclusion, this narrator is telling you the end of the story. This teenage girl ended up hanging out with girls, liking to have girls as her friends. And she understood that, yeah, at that age, I need to have girl friends because we understand each other. And the motive here was clearly presented that during that period of time, it's really confusing. There are so many changes. You had one decision once and then you changed the decision, okay? And also how the society is accepting or not accepting these changes. So that's how you are going to write a narrative for Thursday about the theme of adolescence. You need to specify your motive, for example, whether it's about conflicts between adolescents and their parents, or for example, peer pressure during adolescence. You choose your motive. You write your outline, characters, main events that support your motive, and you write a similar narrative. Thank you for watching. If you have any question, here you have my email, and have a nice day.